Spirit warriors. Sometimes the greatest act of warfare isn't a loud confrontation, it's quiet discernment. You didn't lash out, you didn't broadcast their betrayal. Instead you observed, letting their arrogance build the very stage for their collapse. That's not weakness, that's wisdom in motion. In ancient warfare, silence was often the sharpest weapon. Sun Tzu, the legendary strategist behind, taught that the element of surprise and deception was more powerful than brute force. You lived that. While they spread lies and stirred chaos, you stayed still, calm, calculating, not from fear, but from divine strategy. You moved in the spirit. While they manipulated in the flesh, you fasted, prayed, and aligned with God's plan. It wasn't just survival. It was supernatural preparation. What looked like a retreat was actually a reroute. Your spiritual GPS recalibrating toward victory. You see, betrayal doesn't come from enemies. It comes from those who once claimed to love you. And that's biblical. Even Jesus was betrayed by someone at his own table. But remember, it was that very betrayal that unlocked the path to his purpose. Sometimes it's not your enemies who elevate you, but your Judas. They underestimated the power of a quiet warrior, but still waters run deep. You didn't react, you responded. And in doing so, you turned their plan into proof, their mockery into momentum. Now, the seat of honor they said you'd never reach, you're sitting in it. The storm they sent to break you, you rode it like a wave into your calling. That's divine reversal. That's Romans 8:28 in action. All things work together for good to those who love God. So no, this isn't revenge, this is resurrection. It's about walking in authority with humility, with faith that doesn't blink and strategy born from fire. You've been summoned because you were always chosen. Point 1. The gift of divine discernment, your supernatural radar. Spirit warriors, let's go deep with this one because this isn't just intuition, it's spiritual intel. See, chosen ones don't operate off guesses and gut feelings alone. We operate from divine download. You don't just sense vibes, you discern spirits. That's a whole different ballgame. Ever been chilling, minding your own peaceful business, and out of nowhere the air shifts? The energy feels tight. Your skin might tingle, your stomach knots, or a sudden silence fills the room. Before that door even creaked open, your spirit already clocked the storm walking in. That's not coincidence, and it's definitely not paranoia. That's the Holy Spirit radar doing what it does best, scanning, alerting, and protecting. This is a real thing. In spiritual psychology, it's called spiritual discernment, a gift where individuals can perceive truth, deception, and motive beyond what's visible. And baby, when you're walking in that divine frequency, darkness knows you can see it. That's why people start glitching when you enter the room. They fumble their words, shift in their seats, laugh nervously, or toss out backhanded compliments like, "Wow, I didn't expect you to pull that off." Oh, but you did. Because your spirit picked up on every unspoken intention they were trying to keep tucked away behind fake smiles. Here's the kicker. Evil cannot stay camouflaged in the presence of divine light. The moment you step in with your God-given presence, their little secret schemes light up like Vegas at midnight. They broadcast their plot not with words but through spiritual frequency. And when you've been anointed with discernment, it's not even fair. You're already 5 steps ahead, calmly sipping your tea while they think they've got the upper hand. That's why they start feeling foolish. Because eventually, they realize you were never blind. You were simply being graceful. You clocked the betrayal before it unfolded. You felt the jealousy behind the applause. But instead of clapping back, you rose higher. Because God doesn't just use enemies to test chosen ones. He uses chosen ones to teach enemies. Let them squirm in their regret. Let them wrestle with how their games only helped refine your greatness. You don't fight fire with fire. You just walk in your light and let it expose every shadow in the room. Point 2. You played along, strategically. Here's where it gets spicy, like chili on your victory plate. You didn't clap back. You didn't expose receipts. You didn't lose your cool or even raise your voice. Nope, you observed. You mastered the ancient art of letting silence do the heavy lifting. While they were plotting, gossiping, and assuming you were naive, you were studying their patterns like a chess master reads a board. You smiled, nodded, and let them talk themselves into delusion. Because you understood something profound and timeless. Revenge is mine, saith the Lord. Romans 12:19. And your role? Wisdom, discernment, restraint. That's where your real power lived. Now let's get into some real talk. Psychologically, people who underestimate others often project their own insecurities. They mock what they fear, and they doubt what they can't understand. So while they were trying to outmaneuver you, they were really showing you all their cards. Studies in emotional intelligence show that the most successful individuals aren't the loudest or most reactive, but the most self-aware and strategic. That was you. You knew confronting them would only give them more attention, more drama, and a front-row seat to your reaction. But you didn't feed the fire. You starved it. That's what confused them most. Instead, you moved in silence. Like a seed buried deep in the soil, you were growing roots, strengthening, evolving, leveling up. While they thought you were stagnant, you were preparing to rise. And when you did, it was undeniable. They had no choice but to watch. That's the beauty of divine timing and quiet growth. It humbles the arrogant and exalts the faithful. They thought they were playing you, but plot twist? You were 10 steps ahead the whole time. You weren't playing checkers. You were building an empire brick by brick. And now, let them sit in their regret. Let them wrestle with the fact that you saw right through their games and chose not to play. That's what stings the most, not your wrath, but your wisdom. You didn't need revenge, your growth, your glow-up, your peace. That was the revenge, and it's sweeter than anything you could have ever said out loud. Point 3. God used their plot to promote you. Now let's talk about that divine setup. Chosen ones, it wasn't a coincidence. The very moment they started whispering, plotting, and scheming behind your back, heaven was already orchestrating your elevation. You see, God doesn't just allow adversity, He repurposes it. That attack on your name, that moment of public embarrassment, that blindsiding betrayal, it wasn't just pain, it was preparation, it was the ignition key to your next level. Every time someone tried to bury you, they didn't realize you were a seed. And baby, you didn't just survive the dirt, they accidentally helped you grow roots. Think about Joseph from the Bible. His own brothers threw him into a pit and sold him into slavery out of jealousy. To them, they were erasing him, but to God, they were placing him. Joseph didn't just endure that betrayal, he used it as his launching pad. From the prison to the palace, from forgotten to favored, Joseph was divinely set up to lead a nation. Same energy, chosen one. When they lied on you, God said, perfect. Now I'll show them who I really assign. When they excluded you, God said, great. Now my child stands alone so I can spotlight them. What they meant for evil, God flipped like a master chess player. They handed you lemons laced with poison, and you didn't just make lemonade, you opened a spiritual lemonade factory and franchised it with grace, resilience, and divine power. That's the energy of the chosen, turning sabotage into sermons, turning scars into stories that inspire others. And here's what's wild. While you were focused on healing, rising, and glowing, those same folks are now watching from the sidelines, realizing they underestimated divine protection. They played checkers while God was playing chess with your life. Now they're stuck in guilt and confusion, wondering how their attacks only made you stronger. But here's the secret sauce. You didn't get bitter, you got better. Because true elevation isn't about revenge, it's about resilience. You left them in the dust with a clean heart, while God showed them that you were never the underdog. They just couldn't see your crown. So walk tall, chosen one. The pit was never your final destination, it was just the plot twist before the rise. Point 4. You reflected their darkness without becoming it. This one's deep because it speaks to a rare kind of strength most people never fully master. Envy is a sneaky, corrosive force. It doesn't always show up in obvious ways. Sometimes it's a backhanded compliment, a cold shoulder, or passive-aggressive energy cloaked in smiles. And when it hits, our natural human instinct is to match that energy. Clap back, set the record straight, prove something. But you, chosen one, you didn't absorb their bitterness. You didn't let their negativity stick to your soul like gum to a shoe. Instead, you reflected it, like a mirror. They threw shade, and you let it bounce right back to them, undiluted. And while they sat brooding in their self-made darkness, you kept shining, effortlessly. That's not passivity, that's power. That's the wisdom of spiritual maturity. Because let's be real, anyone can snap back with an insult or feed into drama. That takes zero discipline. But rising above it? That takes emotional intelligence, patience, and deep self-awareness. According to psychologist Daniel Goleman, emotional intelligence, the ability to regulate emotions, empathize, and stay calm under pressure, is a greater predictor of success than IQ. So when you didn't react to their envy, you weren't being weak. You were demonstrating high-level spiritual and emotional mastery. And here's what really bakes their brain: your peace, your calm, your refusal to engage. That silence, that unshaken joy, it confuses the enemy like nothing else. They expect chaos, confrontation, or at least a little venom. But when you give them nothing, when you don't budge from your peace, they're forced to face their own projections. Their tactics fall flat because you've transcended the level where their games even operate. See, you didn't just avoid getting pulled into the pit. They threw dirt and you built a garden. That's the real flex. Because your light is not dimmable by someone else's darkness. You elevated your vibration, and whether they admit it or not, they felt it, they noticed, and deep down, they respect it, even if it stings. So keep glowing, chosen one. Keep mirroring that negativity back until it breaks itself, because when you don't give energy to envy, you prove that your power was never on loan. It was rooted, divine, and untouchable. Point 5. Their exposure was their own doing. Here's the hilarious part: they exposed themselves, and you didn't even have to lift a finger. You didn't snitch, you didn't rant, you didn't post subliminal messages or play petty games. All you did was stand still, stay grounded in truth, and let time do what time always does: reveal everything. Because here's a fact: envy is messy. It's loud, it's dramatic, and it can't help but show its hand eventually. People who operate in jealousy always think they're being slick, but envy has a way of bubbling to the surface like a boiling pot with no lid. It spills, it burns, and it draws attention. You see, when you walk in truth, you don't need to defend yourself. Truth defends itself. And because you didn't react, because you didn't stoop to their level, God let their web of lies collapse like a poorly built house of cards in a windstorm. Their whispers, once hidden in the corners of fake conversations and shady group chats, turned into screams of desperation. Their support slowly unraveled, showing its true form: sabotage dressed in politeness. That fake smile, those backhanded compliments, those "I'm just looking out for you" comments. All part of a carefully crafted performance that couldn't last forever. Time exposed their roles like a badly written play. And oh, the irony, the trap they set for you, the one they dug, whispered about, manipulated for, yeah, they fell right into it, face first. Proverbs 26:27 says, "Whoever digs a pit will fall into it. If someone rolls a stone, it will roll back on them." That's not just scripture. That's real life. That's spiritual law in action. So don't waste your energy on revenge or bitterness. You've already won. Your silence was your weapon. Your growth was your clapback. And now, you keep rising. Let them sit in the discomfort of their own actions, replaying how they thought they could break you. Meanwhile, you rise with grace, purpose, and divine backing. Because when you stay in your lane and walk in truth, God becomes your publicist, your protector, and your vindicator. And trust, He doesn't miss. Point 6. You made peace your power. Chosen ones, your peace is your power. And that terrifies them, chosen ones. Let's talk about something that doesn't roar, doesn't beg for attention, but echoes louder than any battle cry: peace. Not the kind you find when everything is perfect, but the kind you cultivate when the world is trying to pull you apart. The kind that comes from God and roots itself in your soul like an ancient tree that doesn't flinch, no matter how wild the storm gets. That's not weakness, it's divine strategy. While others were losing their minds, trying to stir up chaos, you were sitting in silence, listening for the next instruction from God. While they tried to drag your name through the mud with their gossip, lies, and sideways glances, you didn't flinch, you didn't clap back. You didn't give them the reaction they were hoping for. Why? Because you knew something they didn't. You're not here to impress people, you're here to complete an assignment. And when you walk in divine purpose, your peace becomes your weapon. Psychologists agree that inner peace is linked to better decision-making, higher emotional intelligence, and stronger resilience. But spiritually, peace is proof that you're anchored in something bigger than yourself. That's why it rattles your enemies. They don't understand how you're still standing, how you kept smiling, how you never snapped under the pressure. Truth is, they threw everything they could at you, but it couldn't touch you because you were covered, protected not by noise, but by presence. That stillness wasn't passivity, it was power. While they ran smear campaigns, you were minding your anointing. While they plotted behind closed doors, you were in your secret place, praying for strength, clarity, and grace. While they gossiped, you grew. While they shouted, you listened, and while they schemed, heaven took notes. God made you untouchable, not because you fought back in the flesh, but because you stayed still long enough for Him to fight for you. And that spiritual stillness, it made God your defender. There's nothing more terrifying to your enemies than a peaceful warrior walking in favor, glowing with grace, and rising without revenge. So keep your soul still, chosen one. Peace isn't just protection, it's a declaration. It says, I know who I am and I know who walks with me. Point 7. You were built for this, and you'll do it again, better every time. Last but not least, chosen one, let's be real. This wasn't your first rodeo. Life's trials didn't just start yesterday, and they surely won't end tomorrow. But here's the undeniable truth. Every time the enemy thought they had you cornered, you leveled up. Every attack, a setup for your comeback. That's because your destiny isn't fragile. It's fortified, spiritually reinforced, emotionally tempered, built on a divine blueprint that cannot be cracked by mere opinions or petty sabotage. You weren't placed here by accident. You were positioned by design. Let's break it down. In psychology, there's a phenomenon known as post-traumatic growth, the ability to emerge stronger after adversity. That's you, chosen one. You don't just bounce back, you bounce higher. Why? Because your trials are your training. And God? He doesn't put light in places it can't shine. That means you were placed exactly where you are, to expose darkness, to awaken the sleeping, and to lead those who've forgotten their own light. So yes, you saw the envy coming a mile away. Your discernment is spiritual radar, tuned into frequencies others can't hear. While they smiled to your face and plotted behind your back, you were already 10 steps ahead, flipping their tactics into triumphs. You didn't just survive, you strategized. You didn't just endure, you evolved. And now you're still standing, still rising, still glowing. And here's the kicker, that glow they tried to dim, it only got brighter. You're not just surviving their envy, you're thriving in spite of it. That's what eats them alive. The same ones who whispered, "Who does she think she is?" are now stuck watching you become everything they secretly wish they had the courage to be. But don't get bitter. Get better. Your elevation is not just for you. It's a message to every soul watching that no weapon formed against the chosen ever prospers. So keep glowing, keep rising, keep leading. Because your journey is proof that divine favor outranks earthly schemes. Let them sit in their regret while you walk in your assignment. You're not here to fit in, you're here to shift the atmosphere. And the enemy? They'll think twice next time. Because this wasn't your first battle. But it will be another victory. Spirit warriors, this wasn't just a story of survival. This was a blueprint for spiritual warfare with grace. Never forget, your light exposes darkness. Your presence triggers hidden envy, and your silence. That's often your loudest move. Keep guarding your peace. Keep walking in discernment. And next time they plot, just smile. Because, chosen one, the moment they try to play you, they've already lost the game. Stay woke. Stay blessed. Stay chosen. See you in the next video, Spirit Warriors. Let them keep watching while you keep rising. Until next time, Spirit Warriors, keep walking with fire.